Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk Fishing with No Limits, brought to you by Seagar, high performance braids and 7 reels, 7 seas, 7 continents, 7 days a week, 7 decades in the making, built by anglers for anglers from the makers of St. Croix rods, 7 reels. Today, we're going to head over and talk to some of the media guru guys. We're going to talk to one guy, actually, from Angling Buzz, Angler's Edge, Lender Media, you name it. These guys are involved with all of it. We're going to go talk to good friend and fellow angler, Jeremy Smith. Jeremy is a multi-species guru. The guy knows everything there is to know about angling, no matter what you're chasing, crappie, muskie, walleye, fishing in the U.S. or Canada. He gets around, and you see him on TV quite often on the Angling Edge and all the Lender Media assets that are out there. I mean, they've got media everywhere talking fishing all the time, pretty much 7 days a week. So with further ado, we're going to go head over and talk to Mr. Jeremy Smith.
A little bit about some high performance products that I use, and I'm pretty sure you're going to love it too. It's the Seagar Smackdown braid. There's 3 things about this thin diameter braid that I just absolutely love. 1, it's tough as nails. 2, longest casting, smoothest braid I've ever used. The 8-strand braid, tubular form, just comes off those reels, super smooth, long cast. It doesn't make a lot of noise. It's awesome. And 3, it's super sensitive. No matter what kind of lure or jig I'm throwing out there, I can tell. I've grass, weeds, rocks, sand bottom. I can feel it all right through there into my rod. The stuff is extremely sensitive. So Smackdown comes in 2 colors, high vis and stealth gray. Get yourself some of this stuff, and you're gonna get yourself some more of these. Check them out at seagar.com.
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk Fishing with No Limits. Today, we're talking to Mr. Jeremy Smith. Many of you may know him from Lender's Angling Edge, Lender Media. He's been an icon in the outdoor industry for a long, long time. Not trying to age you there, but you see you got a little gray coming in on that beard like mine as well. So, how are we doing today, Jeremy? What's happening over there?
Doing great, man. Spring is in the air. It was fun talking offline here right before we started about the walleyes biting in South Dakota. Be out there in about a month, and ice is starting to go here quick. It's getting real crumbly, and so yeah, spring is in the air, man. Picked up the boat last week, got it all rigged up last week, and so I'm jacked to get on the water.
You probably shouldn't wait a month. Just you need to go. I mean, Mississippi River's not too far. You obviously got the Missouri River, but the bite is on. It's good, and we have a little cooler a day, but I think the next couple of days we're talking 70 around here, and then we have a blizzard allegedly coming through part of North Dakota, South Dakota. I think it turns into rain by the time it hits Minnesota, but
I hope it's rain.
Yeah,
there's some spring rain.
We need some rain. We needed some snow. We got some the other day, but it is all gone. No
runoff really. It just kind of went. Like, we don't have snow cover anymore either, and river. The Mississippi goes right through town here, and it does not look overly high for spring. So yeah,
it's good and bad but it's crystal clear. So that can make things a little more challenging. Which we'll get into some spring walleye fishing here in a second. But first off, let's just let everybody kind of get to know you a little bit, Jeremy. What's your background? What you got going on over there? What's happening in Lender Media and so forth?
Yeah, a little background. So I work for Lender Media Productions. We produce sport fishing content. So the crew here just loves multi-species fishing. So everything from cats and walleyes to muskies and pike, and travel around the upper Midwest and Canada making fishing content, and been doing it with Lender's Angling Edge almost 20 years now. So this is my 19th year with the company, and we get to hang out every spring. We do that Shields University training, go out there on behalf of St. Croix and Iowa. And that's kind of the first, I'll maybe do a little fishing before that. But that's kind of the first like real fishing trip I do every year. And it always turns out to be fun. Of course, we get to enjoy the lovely Dakota winds, it seems like every year, but it ends up being a good run no matter what. It's a good group of people, and we just have fun.
Yeah, that Shields Fishing University is second to none as far as teaching their staff and guys how to, to get it done. Not just selling the products, but using them, putting them in their hand every day. I mean, the rods, the reels, the line, the electronics. I mean, and boats. Even though Shields don't sell boats, these guys have now ridden in so many different boats. You know, they get a good feel for it. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's super cool. So what a great deal to get hands on like that, and it's a place where you can actually catch some fish too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that little tournament on the Thursday. I missed it last year. It was in Erie for the NWT. I don't. When is it this year? It's probably the same weekend we're at Lake Sharp for the NWT. Is
Yeah,
my
I
guess.
think it's whatever it is. It's the week
20th
after Easter, I believe, something like that.
Yep, that'd be the week we're at Lake Sharp for the NWT. So
Okay.
I'll
Yep.
miss it
Yeah,
again.
you didn't
So-
miss anything on the tournament last year. It was blowing about 80 miles an hour, and everybody was tucked in behind the riprap so they could stand in the boats. And it just seems
Yeah.
like every year when that tournament happens, it's just the wind
Yeah,
just
I think
hammers us, you know?
maybe 3 years ago it was pretty nice out, and that Crow Creek bite was good. But yeah, the last
Yeah.
couple have just been brutally windy.
Yeah.
It's been nice out there. I like March more than April just because the weather seems more stable. We'll get some up and down. It's cold, but the winds are usually. We did have some 50s last week, but it's been, I think 10 to 20. Tomorrow's expected like 5 to 10.
Oh,
10
man.
to 20 is fine because usually I'd say it blows on the upper side of it, but lately it's on the lower side of it. But the way the river bends, you can always get out of it, and there's fish everywhere.
That's so cool. That's awesome, man. Yeah, what I'm always blown away about out there is when you look at that landscape coming from the Northwoods here where we're covered up in trees. It's like, oh yeah, it's starting to blow. Run up to that next bend and it's like you're going and you're going and you're going and you're going and you're going, and then finally you hit the next bend, like everything's way further away than you think.
Yeah, it is. I think it's about maybe 20 miles up to the dam from town.
Yep.
But yeah, it seems like, after you do it every day, it's pretty quick little jump, but then you're just like, man, does it ever end? It's around a bend, around a bend, around a bend, and it keeps going. But the fishing is good. And I haven't been able to get out on the Mississippi ever in the spring, and I'm hoping to here this year. But schedule's getting pretty busy for the Chamberlain guide bite. So, and we have a couple tournaments coming up in April real fast. But so spring fishing, we'll talk some of that stuff. We're on that topic. What's your favorite tactics? What's your go-to? Where you like to go? Obviously, Chamberlain area on the Missouri River. What's your go-to method and kind of thoughts on spring fishing and finding and targeting walleye?
Yeah, so on the walleye side of things, I fish walleyes obviously a fair bit, but not hardcore like you. So, the Rainy River was a place I spent tons and tons of time up there when I was younger, and that's a super busy. Sounds like what you were experiencing at Chamberlain, where it's just boats everywhere. But that can be a pretty sweet bite early. But for me, a lot of times in the Northwoods here, we've got it's a time when a lot of people focus on pan fishing, and I just love spring crappie fishing, especially the way over the years you've just learned so much more about panfish and fish in general, and obviously artificials just being such a huge player, growing up fishing a waxworm or a crappie minnow under a bobber. But there's a jerkbait bite that happens for crappies early in the season, and it kind of goes till about the time they spawn, so into May usually, and it is just awesome, lights out. Catching panfish, smashing jerkbaits, it's really
that
fun.
would be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a really, really sweet deal for sure. So, and then, then out there, I obviously what's cool about like that Missouri River bite is that, you want to pull lead line, you can catch fish on lead line. And I know you're always pitching those flats, snapping plastics, or if you want to go chuck shad wraps at the bank or paddle tails at the bank, or, ribbon worms or whatever. It just, it just is so many different ways to catch them out there that it's super fun.
Yeah, that's the best thing, really. I think at this time of year, like on the Missouri River, I haven't fished in Mississippi in the early spring, and I know they're using blade baits and ripping wraps and three ways and you name it, and it's working. I mean, I think a lot of the pre-spawn walleye are they're whatever you put in their face most of the time. If you can present it properly, it's usually speed. Yep. I think I saw that Angling Edge had a deal on walleye speed the other day on fishing speeds, basically. And I always preach this time of year is to slow it. You really can't go too slow. It's almost like ice fishing. But the good thing on the Missouri River is you can do whatever you want. You want to go pull the channel and pull lead, you can pull flats, you can jig, you can drift, you can slip with the current. I even threw a slip bobber out yesterday while I was pitching. just because there was a much wind, a little current, and they were real finicky, and it's clean water. So get that thing away from the boat and
Yeah.
let it float down. And it didn't work, but I've
Hey.
caught them doing it before when they were being kind of finicky, and it was actually a real windy day, and I had it to spot lock. So I said, I just threw two bobbers out the back and caught a ton of them. And it didn't take long for, 6 more boats to come around you, and then them starting to dig out bobbers and rig up, because it was just what worked and what they wanted that day. But
Yeah, man.
yeah, you can fish however you want, and that's usually what makes a fishery my favorite fishery, like Devil's Lake or Lake Skakwe or Lake Francis Case, is where when you show up, you're not stuck in a one-dimensional type deal, you know.
Yeah, that is the best for sure. And I love casting, and that's one of my favorite things to do out there is just I love throwing at the bank, and just burning riprap, and those fish are up shallow. They can be super aggressive, and that to me is a super fun deal. And then in Minnesota here we don't get to fish walleyes early, other than river situations. But
Right.
man, the last few years too, like when the water opens up, I always tell people like hard baits are really good overlooked presentation in cold water. So many people just think that it's cold water live bait, which of course is true, but it's also one of the best times to pull hard baits, or cast
Yep.
hard baits. And man, like running inside weed lines, like maybe 1 to 6 feet of water when the water's still cold, as soon as the opener's up on our natural lakes, throwing like a number 11 original floating Rapala, just casting, reeling in, or like a 3/16 ounce jig with a 2.8-inch paddle tail on it, right at dark into the first hour after dark. That is so fun, man. Like the big suckers show up, and like it is unbelievable how shallow it is if you've got your
Yep.
headlamp on, or you can see the lights in the
see
boat.
'em.
Like when you see the bite, like the water swirls a lot of time. Like it's so shallow, and you get, I mean, like we got a couple 30 inchers last year, and like 2 feet of water doing that, and it's it's like bass fishing for walleyes, and that's so fun.
That's why I love the shallow water walleyes. People, walleye don't fight, blah, blah. I'm like, you ever caught one in less than 3 foot of water? They fight.
Yeah.
A lot of times the glacial lakes up here, you hook at them, they're like, it's another pike. I'm like, no, it's not. It's like a 24, 25-inch walleye. They are aggressive. And I've caught a ton of them on those number 9, number 11 floating, Rapala Shad Raps in the early spring, thrown on rocks, thrown at night. A ton of people will do that in Nebraska on the dams, obviously, during the spawn.
Sure.
A lot of them don't go back into the post-spawn phase, but they're still not necessarily on the dams. But like you said, weed lines and some of those levees and stuff like that, they still slide up there at night, and feed. And like you said, your headlamp during spawn, you can be looking at it and you'll see them. You can see their eyes,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah,
it's-
absolutely. Yeah. And so many people like in Minnesota anyway, it's trolling, like, and I've done it forever too, but it's like you set up these trolling passes and you're dragging floaters and whatever. And, when you see, like, to your point, when you see them with your eyes, like when the boat gets close, they swim away. And it's not that you don't catch fish flatlining at night like that, but those areas you're catching them flatlining, just cast them. I'm telling you, you'll catch more fish, and it's a way funner way to do it than just pulling. And the other bait that's been really good too, they do this all the time on Green Bay, and it works amazing over here too. Anywhere you've got sand and gravel, is that rip and wrap, man. In the spring, just there's really no wrong way to fish it, but a lot of times you're actually just jigging it, just lift and drop with that bait, and it's they just powder it. It's a really cool deal. So hard baits to me in the spring, it's one of those great opportunities where you get to bust out all those lures you've been collecting over the years. Yep. And really
I overlook the rip and wrap so often. I got a ton of them, and I go to certain places. Our Green Bay, I'm like, yep, it's rip and wrap. And then here, I forget about it, and I don't use it. And I'll talk to a buddy. He's like, oh yeah, I crushed them all day on rip and wraps. I'm like, such a fun bite, like a jig and wrap bite. That I go to certain fisheries or certain times of years I go to it, but I'm like, it works. About everywhere, and theoretically about any time of year. There's obviously certain situations where it excels, but I've seen people try to force it. I've had guys in my boat trying to force it because they wanted it, and I'm catching 5 or 10 fish and they haven't caught one yet until they finally give it up. I'm like, yeah, that's just not the thing here. But 2 weeks from now, it probably is, type thing, because it's a little more aggressive. But you're right. There's no nibbling or soft bite. There's no like jigging wraps. It's either they bite it or they don't.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, Have you running any white bass out there yet this spring? I've got to admit, probably people will be disappointed in me, but I just
Oh,
love
I love
smashing
those.
white
Those
bass.
things are huge out there. I can see them. You know, I can tell where they're at, but they're in that same group that's not biting right now. I haven't gone probably into that 3 to 4 foot. Water's a little low, so it's kind of going from like 8 feet to straight up to like 3.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yep.
but it went up maybe looked like about a foot yesterday or so.
Do you
But
see
it's
that just a little later typically? Like when you're getting the white bass, is that when the water gets into the upper 40s, 50s?
yeah, they seem to. I haven't caught any yet, but it seems like in that at least 40, and we were pushing 40 yesterday. But it's going to go up and down, and it may be a week or two until it kind of stays in the 40s. But yeah, I would say once we're into the 40s, then those things are going to start. They're going good, and there's those massive pods of them, and they're all like 17 to 18-inch white bass that are 2 to 3 pounders, and you can catch them on every cast, and
Yeah, I
nobody
remember
targets
Johnson
them. So
coming back one year out there, and he was with you, and he was just like lit up. Yeah, he caught walleyes, but he's like, dude, we just smashed the Magnum white bass. It was amazing.
yeah, they're great when they're there. Because I've class that we might limit out on walleye quick. I'm like, hey, want to target some of these? And some are like, yeah, this is blast. And I've had some catch a couple, and they're like, I'm good. I'm like, this is so fun. These
They're
things. I
so
mean, you
fun.
hook into it and zing. It's
Oh,
one
they're
thing
just,
if they're like little 14 inchers, but these are big white
yeah,
bass.
they're big ass fish. Yeah, and they're just psychos too. Like just
Totally.
yeah.
And you see them on side image, and I'm like, okay, there's 100 of them. Just throw it over here. I mean, you'll go on rallies where it's every cast,
Yeah.
to where you put the net away and just start kind of trying to boat flip them. But I'm like, they're kind of big to boat flip. You need to reach down and at least pull it up with the line, and after a while, you're going to end up losing something because of it. But
Yep. Yep.
yeah, they are a blast. The other baits I like in the spring when you're talking, in a Chamberlain is the shad wrap. So,
Hmm.
I'm a flicker shad guy and I love all these, but early spring, I'm going right to the shad wrap box. A little
Yep.
more subtle, the balsa bait. It seems like it excels so much more in that colder water.
Well, and two, like doing that shields training, like having some inexperienced anglers in the boat or not as experienced, like when you're throwing at riprap, it's
Yeah.
tough with a jig to get the hang of it. Like you're getting, I mean, whatever, I get snagged all the time still, I mean, you try your best, but like once you get the hang of a shad wrap, just reel down, tick, tick, pause, boom, 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 boom. And like it does not snag all that often and
Uh,
fish smash it, and like I love chucking shad wraps at the bank out there. That's been there was one a couple years ago. It was like a chrome belly, pink head, chartreuse back. It was, I forget what the custom one of those shad wrap custom
yep.
colors one of the retailers had, and that thing was just fire out there. It was just amazing. And the size 5, I don't know what it's like for
Yep.
you, but that size 5 always seems to be the go-to early in the season.
Yep, that's exactly what I use the 5. I'll maybe go 7 or put 1 7 out if I'm trolling or something in a tournament just to
Sure.
hope something big crushes it. But yeah, casting. The same with even the flicker shads. I like a 6 for casting just because they work. They just work better. So you can cast them further. Necessarily better than a 5, but 5 shad wrap cast is good. You don't have to you're not making very long casts because you're right up on that rip wrap and then popping it and getting it straight down. And
Yep.
yeah, they just crush it, and it's kind of hard to beat. Pretty fun.
It's really hard to beat. Yeah, man. Yep, for sure. For sure,
What
for sure. So
what you guys obviously are fishing all over the country, targeting all sorts of different species. I know you love chasing those muskies and obviously the panfish. What kind of trends are you seeing, not just in walleye fishing, but in just all kind of general fishing?
well, I mean the trends definitely seem to be, FFS related stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I mean that's obviously the most talked about thing in fishing right now. So I mean, aside from that, to me it's almost like that's just in a totally different category. I mean, when you look at all the stuff that you've got in your boat and all the lures you've collected, walleye specifically, it's like now it's like slip bobber leech, jigging a half a crawler, or some type of a jig and a plastic minnow that you can rock back, and then a jig and wrap too, obviously.
Right.
But the number of baits have gone way down, just being able to target fish so precisely, But I definitely think walleye fishing has gotten a lot more artificial friendly though too. It seems like in recent years, a lot more people are adopting like hair jigging and snap jigging thin profile plastics is obviously a hot deal, and the jigging wrap's just been dominating stuff. So I think that's just great, and I love fishing walleyes that way more so than the old days of Lindy rigging or whatever,
Right.
So, but yeah, and just plastics trends, even with muskies, obviously blades are number one thing, but rubber, just every year it's just so hard to deny how good rubber baits are, whether it's you're throwing big ultra dogs or you're throwing 10-inch tubes or whatever you're chucking. But it's as fish get more and more conditioned, it just seems like plastic, on the musky side of things, that's where it's going. So
Do
yeah.
you think they? I mean, there's definitely a lot more, casting to walleyes and the plastics and a little bit less live bait going on. You think that's just electronics, or you think it's all the? I mean, you can credit your guys, Linder Media, a ton and Owl for bringing the jig and wrap from ice to open water. Really, and everybody going, wow, and that's a super fun bite. But you
Yep.
think it's just because the YouTube, all the and the information you guys are putting out there, you think, or you just think it's just obviously it's a new generation of anglers who are growing up seeing all that stuff, and they're not old timers like us, where we were used to soaking a crawler or a leech, or a crick chip all day long, moving real slow.
Yeah, I mean that so the jig and wrap thing to me seems like, and you've got a lot more experience probably walleye fishing than I do, but like Leech Lake, for example, is a lake in our backyard. And a lot of these places in Minnesota where when that jig and wrap came out, just like a lot of things, like it's like a commercial fishing operation. Like they just lose their mind for it. There's nothing that's even close to it. It just totally smashes. And it seems like that peaked. And now when those windows, it still can be exceptionally good, but it's
Yep.
not like going out in the boat with one rod and one
Right.
lure. And like you need to be more diversified than that. It's like the fish do get tuned into it, and there has been like a resurgence in live bait, like the
Yep.
jig and half a night crawler. Like that is really tough to beat. And not that it didn't always work, but with FFS and how precise you can be, if you can make a cast on a walleye and they're not like totally negative, like you run a crawler over them and they eat it a lot of times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty deadly. So, and then the precision slip corking thing is
Yeah.
super cool too with the leech, and I just so people understand what we're talking about here. So it's really the same slip bobber setup that you had for years, but maybe using a little bit larger cork, like a tungsten slip weight, and then a small tungsten jig underneath that. And so the whole idea with this setup is that you can throw it a little further. It doesn't tumble as much having that tungsten on there, and you're not fouling nearly as much. And then just being able to be really precise and let that bait sit in front of them. And I'm sure you've seen this too, Brian, but this is kind of interesting. Like a slip bobber fisherman growing up, you'd think, I remember going with my grandpa, like we'd anchor up, put the snap weight on, drop it down, set your depth to be this far off the bottom. And like the walleyes now, if you were targeting them with FFS, they might be in 16 feet, they might be in 12 feet, they might be in 24 feet. Now it's like a lot of times just set your rig at 10 feet. And if you throw at one, and you're accurate and it's 9 feet above them, like they come up and get it. You know what I mean? It's not like you always have to be doing stuff. They just go nuts it's just really hard for a walleye to deny a leech.
Right. It is. I was not a huge slip bobber guy until, I don't know how many. It's been a few years back. It was a Devil's Lake. We were just taking a little lunch break and catching a lot of fish. It's like, let's take a break, anchor up on an old road bed, threw a couple bobbers out to eat some sandwiches. Well, we couldn't eat our sandwiches because we couldn't keep the fish off the bobbers. And they were nice, 18, 20-inch walleyes.
Yeah, man.
I'm like, okay, I'm hooked on this. This isn't just a kid thing where you clip the bobber on and go. And now, like I said, I threw one out yesterday. There's one in the boat rigged up, ready to go all the time. I've been finding, new places to implement them, and it's good for, guiding wise. If you have some kids, I can put the scope on the pole, or I'll just look around. Most of the time I don't even use the live scope and guiding, but I'll be like, they're over there. Just throw it. As long as we're getting in the region, I know there's fish there, and then I'm like, you can just watch it, keeps it a little kid more entertained and, and focused when he's got something to watch versus just holding that, waiting for the bite. And I'm like, when you don't see the bobber, reel down, just reel down, real fast as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super fun to watch the cork go down. It doesn't get old for sure. So yeah. Yeah, and the other thing too with like the slip bobber thing, talk to people about a lot too is drop shotting. You know, it's basically the same thing except instead of fixing the depth from the surface, you're fixing the, you know, where you're
Bottom up.
positioning the bait from the bottom and we drop shot fish for walleyes a lot, whether it's minnows, crawlers, leeches, whatever it is, especially if you're in sand, you know, sand or mud, you know, obviously it doesn't work in super rocky conditions, but yeah, drop shot's another just super deadly way to catch walleyes.
I think it's catching on. There's a drop shot tied up in my boat right now, and I did a ton of it in the fall, and it just super effective, even without the forward facing sonar. But you know, with it, I'd make small pitches, and like I said, those fish feed up. So if you can keep, you know, waller obviously predominantly, you know, tight to the bottom. Sometimes, you know, this time of year right now they're just crawling, you know, tight to the bottom. But I keep it typically around a foot or so, but it's also on
Sure.
a slide, you know, and I'll maybe make that thing 18 inches and then just slide it up and down. But yeah, it works great. I love that. And I run that Legend Tournament St. Croix's drop shot rod,
Yeah.
and it makes it more fun because it's just handles so nice.
Yeah, and that tip is just that the tip
Yep.
is so critical to that where you can just let it load up a little
Yep.
bit and then just all you have to do is reel and the fish is hosed, you know, and it gets screwed. So what are you fishing for walleyes? Are you fishing plastics much or are you mostly live bait fishing when you're drop shotting?
Both. I run a lot of like a flat nose minnow, a Z-Man jerk shad. I'll run a lot of plastics and a lot of times like the jerk shad because it floats. So that helps keep it up a little bit. In the fall, I was putting a live minnow, you know, the biggest minnow I could find on there, and then just kind of working it back to the boat just real slow and occasionally
Sure.
give it a pop. But you're really just almost as kind of a slow drag when that water was down in the 40-degree temp.
When it's cold. Do you see that like artificial have you seen anything like where the artificials might perform better on the river versus lake environments or not necessarily?
Yeah, I like them on the river. I think you got current, so it's probably, you know, giving it that little extra wiggle. I run a Tokyo rig a lot early in the spring too,
Oh no
um,
way.
which is basically like a baby bottom bouncer. You
Mm-hmm.
know, except you're a foot, you're 2 to 3 inches off the bottom, and that one I always have a plastic on, and you can throw it in a rod holder and just put it behind the boat and drag it, and they crush it. But I've had great luck pitching it. I should have ran one yesterday probably, but just a jig and minnow was so effective I didn't need to try anything. But when it's really good like that, that's when you need to experiment, play with other things. But then again, you get a false sense of like, this thing's awesome, it works. Well, it might have been a day they would have bid anything. So you know
Right. Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
is. But the Tokyo rig's been good, and I do that a lot in the summer. And I'll run that out the front when we're slip drifting with current, and we're fishing pretty shallow, like 2 to 8 feet. And the Lewis Clark where I got in Missouri River is a different beast versus the rest of the river. It's a lot shallower. We got some weeds and we got a lot of current. So we just slip drift it, but we drag Lindy rigs and jigs, like 1/8 ounce jigs and a half crawler. And you're basically just throwing everything out the back, or if you slip you know, sideways and you're just dragging it. But I'll put that Tokyo rig with a gulp minnow or any kind of plastic, and typically it'll catch bigger fish. May not catch as many, but when they're on it, you know, if they miss it, they keep coming back till they get it. And
Yeah.
90% of the time, it's a bigger fish.
That's cool. Yeah. And that's just, yeah, people don't know what a Tokyo rig is. It's basically picture a hook that has a split ring on it and then a little wire shaft coming off that split ring and then another swivel on it. And you just slide a weight onto this wire shaft. So you could fish, uh, whatever, an 1/8 ounce and you could fish 3 ounces on it if you wanted. You can make it really heavy. And yeah, we use it a lot in the fall for smallmouth bass fishing. You put like 1.5 ounces on it and you're just, then you let it hit the bottom, then you just slow crank. And like you're saying, that paddle tail just, you know,
Yep.
the sinker's cracking the bottom and then that paddle tail's just wagging. And it's like, it's just super versatile. It was designed for fishing, punching heavy cover, but the open water stuff, it's amazing. We've shot pieces on Mille Lacs with that and other locations. It's really a good, that's a good call, Brian. That's an awesome presentation.
I suppose you put a crawdad looking thing on it and on Mille Lacs and you're fishing on edges of them rocks, and the smallies are probably just
Yeah, smallmouth
dive it
and
down on
walleyes,
them.
like paddle tails for walleyes. The walleyes smash that thing too. Like it's a good walleye, definitely a really good walleye bait.
I threw a Ned rig a ton last summer
Oh yeah, yep.
And the plastic, I'd throw a crawler on it once in a while, but a plastic, whether it's the Z-Man or the Rapalas. I can't think of the name of
The
theirs.
Crush City one, yep.
Yeah,
BLT,
Crush
I
It.
think, is that what it
Yep,
is?
yep,
Yep.
BLT, and then the Z-Man was the TRD, the third. Um,
Yeah.
and then I ran some of the Northland eye candies, but those that was with forward facing sonar. It wasn't very fair some days. It was pretty simple because it just stands there. It's versus your crawler hanging and dangling. Now you got it this way, and those fish are either I basically see straight 45 up, but when they're on the bottom they see it. But if they're they come down like this so they see it,
Yeah.
and they would you just watch them lift it up off the bottom. You just kind of let it load up, and
it is the stupidest lure ever, and like the most awesome fish catching lure ever. You know what I mean? It just looks so. It
catches everything.
Everything, man. Like we catch some of the biggest crappies they get of the year on it. Some of the biggest bluegills show up on it, and whatever you catch. Obviously, walleyes, largemouth, smallmouth, like everything bites that stupid bait. And I guess it's not stupid that awesome bait, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean this is just those are a handful of bass baits that I think you're seeing more and more walleye guys using them. If they're not, y'all need to be using them. So I run the VMC drop shot, the VMC Tokyo rig, and then some of those Crush Cities or the Z-Man TRDs for the Ned rig stuff. And I think I got the VMC jig heads because they got a longer shaft on them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I don't know. That just seemed
like that finesse half moon, or are you fishing the actual Ned?
Nope, the actual Ned.
Okay. Yep.
Ned head jig. Yeah, sometimes they're hard to find with that longer shaft on them, but I like that a little better. Just gets that hook up, and when you're running like I don't know what those are, probably 4-inch plastics on them, I think. So
sure. Yeah, man. Yep. Ned's super awesome deal on the artificial side of things, and it's super cool. I mean, that's one of the things I just love about fishing is that it's a bass lure, but it's like a walleye doesn't know it's a bass lure. Like,
yeah, they don't care.
Yeah, right. It's just these concepts in angling just carry over, and it's cool.
Well, every time you got the bass comes to La Crosse or something to fish the Mississippi River, the guys are posting pictures of all these big walleyes they caught all week, and they're throwing lizards and all sorts of stuff up in the weeds and shallow, and it's like, I've been telling you for years, this is where the walleye live.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago when my 20s even, I didn't really think of walleyes as being like a fish in the weeds, like I think a lot of people just thought they were off the breaks, the points, rock piles, and the last 20 years, it's been like, holy man, how much time do you spend fishing walleyes and weeds? Like a lot, they're in there. But there's always walleyes in the weeds.
Yep. Yeah. Lewis and Clark, where I got it, we have just zebra mussels have taken over, but it's made the fishing so much better because now the water is cleaner than it's ever been. Out of all the Missouri reservoirs, that one's by far the dirtiest. It's the smallest, but it's really the current's a lot faster because it's smaller, so it's coming through and it's just in and out of that lake quick. But now the whole shoreline there's miles of weeds.
Wow.
And so the perch population is blown up, and that's you're lucky to catch a couple perch a day randomly by walleye fishing, and now you can target them, and you could if you could probably go catch your 15, 20 perch, and they're big.
They're big ones in there.
Yeah,
huh?
they're like
cool.
They're going to be your 12, 13, occasional 14 incher, but you're going to average 10 to 12 inch perch all day long if you get on them.
Oh man.
And then so walleyes are big, and then on that reservoir versus the rest of the Missouri River, GFP just came out with a study and said the walleyes are hitting 15 inches in 2 years.
Oh wow, super productive.
Yeah, so they're growing super fast. They're heavier. A 24, 25 incher is 4 or 5 years, and they're already that big.
That's amazing.
Says they're growing. Most places, the rest of Francis Case, Chamberlain's 3 years and are hitting that 15-inch mark. But he said Lewis Clark at 3 years they're over 17 and a half inches. He says they're growing fast. And the perch all of a sudden they're like this huge, perch. But I'm like, it's zebra mussels. We got weeds everywhere. So now we have a lot more bait, insects, and now you can just fish those weeds all summer long because they're full of walleye and pike.
They don't leave. Yeah, that's cool. The habitat has changed so much in the last couple decades. How the fisheries have the zebra mussels and the water clarity and the way weeds are growing in different spots, and how it's just a really dynamic shift. And and the fish are utilizing all that weedy habitat too. So
Yeah, people want to hate on the zebra mussels, but you won't ever hear me hate on them too much. I get it. There's good and bad, but Mother Nature will do its thing. If they're not supposed to be there, they eventually won't be there. Something else will move in,
yeah, it
whatever the
changes
case.
it just changes the fishery, for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, yep, yeah, man.
So we hit on that forward-facing sonar a little bit as obviously a trend. What are your thoughts? Weren't you helping or doing some research with the DNR, or we're in the loop on the Minnesota DNR doing some things with it? Some
Well,
studies?
there was some crappie stuff we did. It just more so looking at barrel trauma and some
Better
crappie
trauma.
lakes, and
Yep.
then I don't know how many people are like. It's obviously a complicated topic. We had some meetings. I'm really into the muskie thing. Some meetings last week, and the muskie anglers are really freaking out about it, myself
Right.
included. Like, uh, a 50-inch muskie is not Lewis and Clark 15-inch
Right.
walleye, right? It's a
Right.
30-year-old fish, and like they live in these open water environments, and they're just incredibly easy to see with this technology. And when they live out there, they don't always bite, but a lot of times they like bite and they swallow baits, and catch rates for a lot of people have doubled, even tripled, or factors higher than that with these really big fish. And so a lot of us are going, hey, like, time out. Like, Minnesota muskie population is probably a third of what it was 20
Really?
years ago. Our stock fisheries have collapsed, and now the only places left that are good fishing are native lakes. And there's a lot of fish getting handled right now because of this technology. So I think it's worth anglers taking pause and saying, hey, maybe this idea of sharpshooting really big ancient fish and handling them a whole lot is probably not going to be a good idea for the even though they're being released. You're seeing dead ones floating out there, and you just can't handle those fish that frequently. So I really enjoy fishing with forward facing sonar. It's an amazing tool. You learn so much, and it's one of those complicated deals. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, I love walleye fishing with it. Like, to your point, you see a pack of walleyes up there in the flat, you throw it to them, you catch them. It was like, that was super cool, but maybe it's not the best thing to be targeting walleyes or muskies in 30 feet of water,
Right.
at the same time, right? So you just have to be responsible with it. And I think each situation kind of has a different, different way of looking at it.
The muskie tournament trailer over there was the first ones to ban it, if I recall, right?
Yeah, they did. And I'm not for sure, but most of the Muskies Inc. tournaments, if not all of them, I think will have banned it, going forward. And the surveys from the Muskies Inc. clubs and something that Josh Borowski did on the Muskie Insider too. I mean, it seems like the vast majority of muskie anglers want some type of regulation on the technology for muskies, and I don't think anybody's calling it out, or maybe I'm sure people are for other critters, but muskies are just really, really susceptible to that technology. So all fish are different, and we're in an era of like the unknown is now knowable, right? So
Right.
it really changes things.
It's starting to be around, it obviously takes time for something new that's introduced to get the science and the research and studies done. And I think a lot of people just kind of started doing studies in the last year or two. It's been around 5+ years already, but obviously it just keeps evolving and getting better. And word is out, so there's more and more people using it. And you've seen Bass, MLF, Bass, NPLF all make adjustments to their tournament series this year. I think NPL went 0, no forward-facing sonar. So you see, there's like 10 or 15 of the Bassmaster guys that slid over there, or they're doing both, just because they like that. And then you have, I think MLF, you can only use it for one of the 3 periods.
Yep.
And you can see that, big time with, like, if you watched the other day with Wheeler, 40, 50 pounds, and then boom, the next 2 periods are maybe 10 to 20 pounds, without using it. So it clearly makes catching fish a little bit easier in certain locations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fishing, right? So catch rates are variable, and it depends on a number of things. But yeah, when it works, like it's an unbelievable tool. You just can't argue with its effectiveness.
And hard to hide a 50-inch muskie from it. So
it's really really.
That's, if you ask me, that's fishing, right? Is the hunt is the biggest challenge, is finding the fish. Catching them isn't necessarily all that hard once you find them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's figuring out and then putting a pattern and everything together.
Yeah, we're just way more efficient now than we've ever been. And, you look at jumps in technology, and obviously this is a huge one, but, maps, bigger outboards, boats. I was talking to AFS a while ago about different technologies in fishing, and so I talked to Al to kind of get his take on a career in fishing. And one of the points that he brought up that I thought was interesting, most people would say, oh, GPS, or you'd assume maybe the green box as being these things, but he brought up, when the bigger outboards and the bigger boats like the Pro V was introduced, he's like, man, we could safely now go out onto Erie. Like you could go out in the middle of Mille Lacs when it was windy, and before that we were just really limited to accessing big water. And he's like, when those boats came out and all of a sudden we could access all these big water bodies, he's like, that was one of the biggest jumps in technology for me. And then obviously mapping. I mean, that's just an unbelievably huge advancement. And then now we've got when you pair the sweet map with side imaging and forward facing, like holy smokes, you got a real good idea of what's happening around you.
Yeah, we've come a long ways. Right now is a good time. We'll take a quick commercial break, brought to you by 7 Reels, and we'll be right back, talk a little bit more about the advancements in electronics. Whatever your skill or experience level is as an angler, you deserve a fishing reel that contributes to your success and satisfaction on the water and never detracts from it. From the makers of St. Croix rods, 7 Reels, spelled Seviin, is born of 7 decades of design and manufacturing expertise, industry-leading angler support, and the American family ownership dating back to 1977. 7 Reels are designed and crafted for high performance and unrelenting reliability. Verified at least 16 different ways by extreme torture testing at 7's one-of-a-kind Park Falls, Wisconsin laboratory. 7 Reels are also proven on the water by the most demanding professional guides and tournament anglers. So by the time a 7 reaches your hands, it's ready for anything you throw at it. Guaranteed by the best and easiest warranty in the industry. Disappointment happens, but there should never come as a result of your reel. 7 Reels are tested, proven, and guaranteed to be the most reliable on the planet. Check out the entire lineup at 7reels.com. All right, folks, we're back talking to Jeremy Smith with Angling Edge and Lender Media, talking about electronics. The advancement, electronics, boats, everything has come a long ways. And as I was telling you before we jumped on here, that certain like Chamberlain at this time of year, like Francis Case and Mille Lacs, there's target-rich environments where I don't even use the forward-facing sonar because you really don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
I find them on side image is the one thing I always say that if I have one electronic in my boat, it's my side image. I mean, besides mapping, I suppose. If I don't have mapping, I'm going to run into something. I'm not going to go very far at all. Right. But, give me the side image. I don't use 2D a whole lot, unless you're out on the Great Lakes or, trolling deeper. I mean, it's side images. It's never turned off in my boat, period. But then there was days like yesterday where the fishing wasn't good, and it could have just been a matter of the timing or whatever the case is. But I find them with the side image and went, I'll just play with the scope a little bit. And then it was an absolute hurting, and I scoped every fish.
Sure, yeah.
And it was like, this is fun. I'm just going to keep doing this because this is fun. But there's so many I wouldn't have caught without it because I got them, you worked them like right to the boat. Like you would have reeled up and made another cast, but instead I let it sit.
Yep, you can see there was one.
Yep, I'm like, he's coming, and I had one. The last one I caught today bit me 5 times, and on the 5th bite I got him.
No way.
I have it all on video, and I was like, damn it.
Oh, that's cool.
Damn it. I could see him, and he kind of loaded it up, and I'm letting him have it, and then I'd feel him let go of it. And I even added a stinger hook, and then I was like, really? 4 times? I missed this thing 4 times. He never was just committed enough to where I was ready to set the hook, and then I slid it over to this side trolling motor, about to bring it up, and boom, 5th time, he choked it down good. And it was like a 17, 18-inch walleye.
Perfect. That's what you want to catch, man.
And I'm like, really 5 times that thing bit me on that one retrieve. I had one I got halfway up, watched it come off, and this is what I put a stinger hook on after this, and it didn't take the middle. I threw it back there real quick and watched him go right back to it.
No way.
Yep, he chased it and he bit it one time, but not very good. I didn't get him, but he followed it and he went right back to it after he just let it go. And I mean, he had to be hooked. I mean, it pulled drag and then it just came off. And he followed it down, picked it up again, but just kind of by the tail, not enough. And then he was like, nah, this guy learned me once. I'm out. I'm good.
Oh, yeah. So when you're, how often are you fishing minnows out there compared to artificials? And like, when do you switch to crawlers on the Missouri?
I usually go with artificials and minnows. I prefer to just throw artificials often as possible, especially if I'm guiding, just so I'll give the clients minnows unless they're going to cast a ton. But we'll mix it up and just see what they want, what's working best that day. I almost
Mhm.
always will have an artificial just so I'm not having to bait myself if I get a fish. But crawlers, I usually look at about when it hits 50 degrees.
Okay.
The water
Yep.
hits 50, I'm done with the minnows, and it's all crawlers. And I usually don't touch minnows again until like September, which I should probably be using minnows throughout the summer because they're still eating them. I just don't.
Yep.
The crawler bite's so good, but I hate crawlers. They're such a mess. So
Yeah. Super, super messy. For the are you fishing like just minnow profiles or paddle tails or both, or do you have like a
in early spring, anything that's buoyant, so a gulp or a Z-Man,
okay? Yep.
anything that floats just to help slow it down. Right now, I got the Z-Man jerk shed is on a Legend Extreme rod and that never comes off. It's
Mm-hmm.
on there all year long, no matter what. There's always one on there, and right now I put a little scent on it because I think that scent helps a lot in the
Sure.
cold water. But yeah, paddle tails. If the water's a little dirtier, I'll go with the paddle tails. I use just kind of a minnow profile with a split tail or a
Yep.
straight type tail in the spring. As it warms up, I'll go to a paddle tail or even and there's no reason not to have one now. Paddle tails, it catches up fine, but the water's so clean. I'm like, I just don't think I need it. So,
Sure.
but I know at Lake Sharp, I've had good luck using the paddle tails up there versus the other ones. So, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a little fishing closer to the dam. There's a little more current, so that thing's really getting a lot of vibration. But it just depends. But a ripple
Yeah.
shad's a really good one. There's so many plastics out there. I have a whole front right hand side of the boat is all plastics, and there's just too many to choose sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, there's a zillion options. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
there's
it's
too
tough to
many.
beat a minnow. If you've got if you can experiment and see. Obviously, if they're biting, you don't want to be messing with minnows. But man, sometimes those walleyes, like to your point, like biting it 5 times, it's just amazing how they can just vacuum in a big swim bait or whatever else, and
Yep.
then just hold on to a minnow, and you're just watching the tip of your rod just load, 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 load. If you pull, you're not going to get them.
Yep.
You're firm to
Yeah. Yesterday they were biting good. The first fish of the day was like a 19.5-inch walleye on a plastic. And then I didn't get any more, and then I went to minnows in the afternoon, and I was getting them good. So I was right before I left. I'm like, I'm gonna throw my plastic again. First cast had one, lost it halfway in, and I threw like 4 or 5 more, and they never touched it.
Jeez, huh?
I'm like, every one of those I threw that minnow at, they followed it in, and they were starting to get a little bit more aggressive. But I'm like, yesterday was a minnow day.
Yep.
So, but I tend to get bigger fish on the plastics, but I'm running
Sure.
bigger profile. I mean, they're,
Yep.
3.5 inches versus a 2 to 3 inch minnow. But
Yep.
granted, in the summertime, my biggest walleyes always come on a 2-inch piece of night crawler. So
Right. Yep. Yep. Fish like worms. I always tell people that. Fish like worms.
they do it. It's hard
Yep.
to beat a worm. So
Yep. Yep. So
what's new with what can people that are watching can expect Angling Edge? You guys are putting out stuff like crazy. I know you've been in Canada a lot, doing a bunch of things up there. What's coming up for the next, this season? What other information on Linder Media? You guys still doing Angling Buzz part of it? Target Walleye and
yeah, so we're still like if you're jumping on our shows are still on TV right now, but then we're also releasing shows still on YouTube. So that's definitely worth checking out. And so that like the Angling Edge shows we film a year in advance. So that's all the stuff that we shot last year. So we're dropping a new show every week on our YouTube channel. And then we're gonna kick off Angling Buzz again. What is it? I think it's May 3rd is when we're kicking that off again, and that's a lot more local. And we're going to mix that show up a little bit this year. We're going to have a little bit different style and feel to it. We'll have a version that's a lot longer, so there will be opportunity for more conversation like this within the program on our YouTube channel. So I think it'll be a nice little change of the way the style of the show is, and then we're starting to plan for summertime. And yeah, you mentioned Canada, and that's like my favorite place in the world to fish, and I think a lot of people here like it too. So we'll get some trips lined up there, and we spend a lot of time it's Sunset Country, Ontario, so just basically north of the Minnesota border here. So that Lake of the Woods, Rainy Lake, Eagle Lake, Lac Sewell, up the 105 towards the English River and that stuff. We spend quite a bit of time up there, and then we'll venture into Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well. And I obviously love fishing wherever, but it's like most of the trips for me usually start at the end of June into Canada. So you're all fired up about fishing in Minnesota or the Dakotas or wherever.
Right.
And then you make your first trip up there, and for whatever reason, it's just not as exciting to fish around home anymore. Even though people
Right.
where I live, it's like a destination to go fishing. But once
Right.
you're there, you're like, yeah. So I just got back from really good fishing.
Yeah,
There's so many amazing places up there. It's so cool.
you're kind of spoiled where you live, and I mean, so am I. Just a couple hours from the river, and we don't have a season. And I don't know if I could live in a state that had a season. I guess I lived over there, I'd be on the Mississippi, but Iowa and the Chamberlain area right now, there's a ton of Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota, boats because they can't fish.
Yeah. I mean, we've got border waters here, and that's it. So basically, the Rainy and, like you said, the Mississippi, Twin Cities and south. So like Mississippi goes right through. I'm sitting a mile from it right now, but it's not considered the open season there. So you got to get into the border waters for that to be a deal. But yeah, it is tough. I think a lot of people are questioning why we can't fish for bass or pike, or
Right.
or we're just limited to fishing crappies and sunnies basically, or rough fish in Minnesota. So it does push anglers to other states. A few years ago, Wisconsin opened their bass season, and we started going over there. And then for years, we've always gone, as soon as the ice goes out, gone to northeast South Dakota to bass fish out there. I mean, there's great largemouth and smallmouth fishing out there, and we've obviously got exceptional bass fishing here. And whatever, Minnesota just decides to keep the season closed until they start spawning, and then they open it up for harvest.
Right.
So
Well, some things we'll just never understand.
Yeah,
So
right.
it just,
there's just some of those old laws that are just traditional that should definitely be. And I do believe they're looking at it. Hopefully, they change that up to give some anglers more opportunity, for sure. So,
that's why they close it, right, to protect the walleye spawn, and so it doesn't. I mean, Iowa's the same way. I think it's the first weekend of May or May 1st or something like that is when it usually opens.
Yep.
I think people are getting just brighter. I mean, you're going to see them if you're traveling long ways. And like right now, you'll see people posting these stringers of all these, pre-spawn females out of Francis Case. But there's a lot of fish. The place is very, very healthy. If you go to YouTube, South Dakota Game Fish Parks has a study they just did, or they do them every year, but they put it on YouTube this year, the meetings, and the catch rates were way lower than you would have thought. They did kind of a guesstimate of how many fish were taken out of there. I'm like, that's it? I mean, because you figure, there are millions of fish, and I think the catch numbers were tens to maybe tens of thousands.
Really?
And I'm like, that's not even a dent in it. So
there's a lot of fish out there. But I mean, you see what it is. I mean, you kind of get what you get out of it, what you put into it. I mean, You're out there a lot more than I am, but you see plenty of people just drifting haphazardly and not catching much. And obviously you fine tune a couple things and you're catching lots, but there's a lot of rods that aren't bent out there too.
No, it was in a lot of that the last couple of days, but then you'll see like Allen's Guide Service, who has a ton of boats, and they're crushing them, but you're not seeing all of them. You're only seeing the ones that caught them. You're not seeing the guys that didn't. And we've all been there, and we just some days don't. And it's been a little tough until you kind of get it figured out. And I had plenty of those boats around yesterday, and they look at you when I'm flipping in 18s and throwing them back. So I'm not keeping any. I'm just out here to have some fun and catching fish, and I hardly ever keep any. And they're just like, man, I drove 4 hours. That guy's he just threw back 8 fish, and we haven't got a limit. We've caught one all day. And you're like, pay attention, to what the guy's doing and mimic it. Maybe you'll start kind of putting. I did see an older couple that the gal started casting, and the old man started grabbing the net.
Oh yeah,
she paid attention. She caught on, and all that she kept saying was, "Get the net." He's in the front, and he's like, "Okay." He kept running in the back, and they did have a double at one time. So I think they probably got their limit there, but they just kind of watched and went, "Let's do what that guy's doing," and it worked out for him. So I always say that in our last podcast, we talked about that a little bit with whoever else was on there, just being observant, what's going on around you, what are other people doing. I don't like the crowds, but it's a good way to know if the fish are biting or not. Typically, if there's 50 boats there and there's no nets flying,
Yeah.
Probably a good reason.
Yeah,
So
right.
probably not a great place to fish, but paying attention to the big thing right now in spring is huge is the water clarity and the water temperature. Whether on the
Yep.
Missouri or the Mississippi, because the runoff can get it dirty, it can get too dirty, it can be too clean.
Yep. Yeah, I always tell people like the best tool that you've got on your boat in the spring is the thermometer. Like all those things are great, but man, you find those temperature gradients just a few degrees difference, and they're just every kind of fish, everything goes to warm water, So
yeah, 1 to 2 degrees makes a huge difference in spring, and you'll know it when you're sighting them and you roll in there and go, oh wow, like you fish up further up the river near the dam. And I'll pick up a lot of fish on side image, but I can sit up on the front of the bow and I'll look down because I can see 15 feet. I'm like, oh, those are carp. I'm like, I can just look. And I'm like, because you can see that white tip of that walleye tail pretty good. And if it's just a quick flash out of the way. But I've looked around like, oh, that's a paddlefish. Those are all carp. There's a little school of carp. I'm like, yeah, I'm out of here. It's just too clean. There's probably some walleye around, but they're going to be right to where I can't see the bottom. Where most of those are hanging out. So
yep.
Your eyes are they don't lie. Electronics don't lie, but your eyes really don't either. So
right. Yeah. Pay attention.
So good polarized sunglasses. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. Jeremy, I know you got a busy schedule and a lot on your plate over there. You guys are just putting out content like crazy. So people check them out over at Angling Edge. If you haven't signed up for the Target Walleye, go over there, get signed up for that. They're everywhere. These guys are the icons in the walleye and just the fishing world. I grew up in Fisherman TV in the magazine back when Alan Ron had it, and just loved it because it was the only one that got into the science of it. And you guys still do that. You get into the details on the why. Probably more than any other fishing show out there. Most of them we're just catching some fish, but we're catching them here now because of this. This is why, or this is the fish's behavior in this type of temperature or situation or season or whatever it is. And that, you guys are still bringing that, to the table, which makes you basically stand way above, everybody else.
That. And yeah, I grew up watching those guys too. And there's a collection of the old In Fisherman magazines. It used to be in my office here. And man, if you open one of those things and like your day is shot, you'll just be like, they're just so cool, just masterpieces from back in the day and way ahead of their time. So
yeah, it's words. It's not just inundated with photos. There's words. There are article after article after article. It's not full of ads and just full page pictures like you're gonna get nowadays because you got to generate the revenue for it somehow. But now that nobody reads, right? It doesn't work out as well. But so leave our anglers with one little nugget, something that you think will help them with their angling journey as they move forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think we hit on this in the conversation is just, try something new. And like when fishing is good, that's when you try something new. Like most anglers always try something different when the fish aren't biting. Maybe it's because there are, whatever, let's face it, there's days when fish are just harder to catch than others, but when they're biting and they're biting, that is the best time to break out new stuff and gain confidence in different presentations, and it's just going to make you a better angler. So when you've got peak period stuff's happening, that's when you try something new.
Yep, that gives you the confidence. That is that's the ticket right there, pretty much, right? If you don't think it's going to work, it won't work. But if you believe it'll work, it just might.
Yep. Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you having me, Brian. This was fun. I'll see you.
I will. We'll probably be at the NWT, but I don't know. Maybe I'll swing down there. We're not going to be far away, and hopefully just don't need a whole lot of practice for that tournament. That never works out that way. But I imagine there may be a wind day or something like that, somewhere in there that process. So, all right. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for giving us some time today, and thank all you for following along. Go ahead over their social media pages, Target, Angling Edge, Leonard Media, follow along, stay up to date, check them out on YouTube, and watch the show on TV, wherever that airs on all the time. Several different networks, Outdoor Channel.
Jump on our website, anglingedge.com. You'll find where it's at.
You'll find it. All right. Sounds good. And thank all you. So stay safe, and we'll see you on the water.